Cynthia is undoubtedly one of the strongest trainers of all time, but a lot of her Pokemon are not available in Legends ZA. So, with more than half of her roster unobtainable, could Cynthia still conquer Lumio City and reach rank A? To find out, I decided to try and beat Pokémon Legends ZA as Cynthia by using only Cynthia's Pokemon. With a bunch of extra rules on top to make this challenge even harder, could Cynthia dominate yet another region? Well, let's find out. As soon as we step off the train in Lumio City, all of Cynthia's possessions are stolen, including all of her Pokemon, as well as the hearts of her many victims from over the last 2 decades. This means that, for the very beginning of the game, we don't have any Pokemon. As a result, when taking on Zack for our first promotion battle, Cynthia has no choice but to square up against him in hand-to-hand combat. But once the long tutorial of this game is all taken care of, we're free to explore all of Lumio City, which means that we can finally start finding some of Cynthia's Pokemon. There are 3 Pokemon of Cynthia's that we can obtain right away, and the first of these is Budew. As the unevolved form of Cynthia's Roserade, Budew is far less menacing, but it is available in Wild Zone 2, making it our first eligible encounter. While Budew was basically a guaranteed catch, the other 2 Pokemon that we can find right away are much rarer and much harder to catch. So first, I went and dropped some cash to buy some better Pokeballs before heading out to hunt down our next encounter, Eevee. While Glaceon didn't appear in Cynthia's iconic Gen 4 roster, it did appear in her Black and White 2 team, as well as during the anime, so it definitely counts. Having an Ice type will be very useful later on, but for now, we're left with just a vanilla Eevee. This leaves only one more Pokemon of Cynthia's that we can obtain right away, and it's one that evolves into one of her most iconic Pokemon, Riolu. The Gen 4 Fursona that evolves into Lucario, who features in every single one of Cynthia's mainline teams. So, after catching Riolu, it may not be Cynthia's fully powered squad, but now we have our starting team of 3 to try and take on Lumio City. You might think that these are some strong Pokemon, especially when you consider what they end up evolving into. However, this is literally 60% of our total number of obtainable Pokemon in this entire challenge. Regardless, with our starting trio now obtained, it was time for Cynthia to truly begin the challenge by trying to climb up the ranks of the ZA Royale. Our first promotion match is against Yvonne, making this an even 3-on-3 for our debut battle. So, after entering the battle zone and winning a few fights to earn our challenger's ticket, Cynthia marched right over to Yvonne, ready to establish her dominance as the Sinnoh champion. But that's not what happened here. Not only are our Pokemon unevolved, they also have some pretty abysmal movesets. Against the lead Spritzy, all I can do with Budew is Absorb, which is really weak and really slow. Just before Budew is about to fall, I switch out into Eevee, who is able to finish off Spritzy with Tackle, Quick Attack, and Disarming Voice. This begins a small comeback, as Riolu is able to square up against Swirlix. Despite our type disadvantage here, after a workup, Metal Claw and Bullet Punches are enough to overpower Swirlix, bringing Yvonne down to her final Pokemon, Vivillon. But despite this now being a 3v1, Vivillon is just too strong. With access to Gust and Draining Kiss, it has a really solid matchup into my team, allowing it to quickly take down Riolu, as well as finish off the weakened Budew. Eevee is able to put up some resistance, but ultimately, it's still not enough, as Vivillon lands one last Gust, completing the reverse sweep and handing us our very first loss. Wow, that was pathetic. Are you really the Sinnoh champion? I mean, I can't believe how weak you are. If I had my Garchomp with me, you and that Vivillon would be in a body bag right now. While that fight was pretty close, it's also true that our team is struggling, which is very unfitting for Cynthia. So I set out to upgrade our team, and thankfully, there are a few big upgrades that we can get right away. For the first of these, on the rooftops of Lumio City, I was able to find an Ice Stone. With this, our Eevee can evolve immediately, giving us access to Glaceon. I'm convinced that Cynthia only has this Pokemon to serve as her living, breathing, portable ice cream machine. Regardless, Glaceon gets a big stat boost relative to Eevee, as well as a much stronger move pool, making it a very welcome addition to the team. After that, our second upgrade is a little more abstract, as by taking my walking houseplant out on a few coffee and ice cream dates, this raises its friendship, which eventually allows our Budu to evolve into Roselia. Our Pack-a-Punched plant gets a lot of useful new moves, so with our two newly evolved Pokemon, we once again return to Yvonne, ready for a rematch. Well, if it isn't the oh-so-scary Sinnoh champion. I already beat you, don't make me embarrass you again. Roselia, waste this fool. And waste this fool we did. Thanks to Roselia now knowing Poison Sting, we have much better coverage for dealing with Yvonne's two fairy types. The combination of Poison Sting, Magical Leaf, and Absorb are able to crush through both Spritzy, as well as the Swirlix that comes in after that. Once again, Yvonne was left with only her Vivillon, and this is an awful matchup for Roselia. But after our plant finally falls, this clears the way for Glaceon to make its debut. And with two super effective Icy Winds, we quickly claim the final KO, as well as our revenge over Yvonne, giving us our first win and propelling Cynthia to rank X. Wow, Cynthia, you really are strong. But was it really necessary to make Yvonne beg for mercy like that after you beat her? Don't question my methods, child. Inflicting trauma on people is my specialty. Now that we have a few evolutions on our team, this next section of the game becomes relatively smooth. It can basically be summarized as crushing dreams and eating ice creams. Because in our rank up match against Shabby, while this is a 3v4, Glaceon is gradually able to solo through his first three Pokemon with Icy Wind, Swift, and Wish. His final Pokemon, Furfrou, almost sweeps our entire team, but thankfully, a Rock Smash from Riolu followed by a quick Bullet Punch are just enough to give us the win on our first attempt. Then, in the next promotion match against Rintaro, it's a pretty similar story, as we gradually work our way through his three elemental monkeys, overpowering them for another quick win. While those fights were somewhat close, now Cynthia had been promoted to rank V. With that promotion, this signifies the end of the early game. It's at this point that Cynthia comes face to face with the legendary Zygarde. But there's only room for one ground-type dragon in Cynthia's heart. It's also this section of the game that we're finally given our Mega Bracelet. Since there are 3 potential Mega Evolutions on Cynthia's team, this bracelet is going to be very useful as our challenge goes on. Although, from this point on, we enter the Legends ZA mid-game, where the difficulty starts to increase massively. Every trainer from this point on will have stacked teams and Mega Evolutions, which will continue to become harder and harder as the game goes on. And that becomes apparent when we face up to our next opponent, Vinny. Unlike our battles so far, Vinny's team has some insane firepower, including his very deadly Mega Drampa, while our team, on the other hand, is a lot less impressive. Despite my better judgment, for science, I tried taking on Vinny with Cynthia's team as is, but this went even worse than you'd probably expect. Forget about Vinny's Mega Drampa in the back, we couldn't even make it past his first Pokemon. Houndoom is such an awful matchup for us. Riolu is our only Pokemon who isn't weak to fire, but it just doesn't have enough strength to survive for very long. From here, both of our remaining Pokemon are highly susceptible to flames, which means that Roselia is burnt to a crisp by Fire Spin and Fire Fang, before Glaceon follows suit soon after, handing us a comprehensive loss. Cynthia's entire team had just been thrashed into the dirt by Vinny's lone Houndoom, and clearly, if we wanted our team to survive this difficulty spike, we would need to get a lot stronger. Thankfully though, at this point of the game, there are a few more upgrades that Cynthia can access. First, now that we've unlocked Wild Zone 10, it's here that we can find our next new Pokemon, Dynamo. It's not an overly powerful Pokemon in its base form and can't evolve just yet. While Electros isn't a member of Cynthia's core Sinnoh roster, it does appear in her team during Black and White too. Regardless, at least now we have a fourth Pokemon to even the numbers against Vinny. But even more significant than that is our next upgrade, because by going out to eat even more ice cream and coffee, this time with our Riolu, its friendship eventually rises high enough, allowing it to evolve into Lucario, one of Cynthia's iconic Gen 4 Pokemon. As a fighting steel type, Lucario has some great coverage, as well as a really strong matchup into Vinny's team. So, with these upgrades, our team was looking significantly stronger as we then returned to Vinny, ready for our rematch. Houndoom was a monster in our last fight, and this time is no different. I lead with our new Dynamo, whose only real job here is to hit Houndoom with Thunder Wave. That's all our little electric type is able to accomplish, but it's still an important contribution, because with Houndoom paralyzed, when Lucario hits the field, a super effective Aura Sphere followed by a quick power-up punch are all we need to claim the first KO. Now the fight was an even 3-on-3, with this already being better than our first attempt. And from here, the momentum would only continue, as Roselia can handle Sharpedo with a super effective Giga Drain, before also outlasting the Baniri that comes in after that with the help of Leech Seed and Magical Leaf. In the case of Vinny's Ace Dragon, our Glaceon actually has a great matchup here. As a result, the super effective combination of Icy Wind and Ice Shard eventually earn us the KO, giving us a much stronger performance against Vinny this time around. All four of our Pokemon contributed to that win, and with Vinny's Mega Dragon now turned into a delectable frozen treat, Cynthia earns a big promotion all the way to rank F. Following that win, Vinny has a request for us. Cynthia, thank God you're here. We desperately need your help. Why? Is there an untraumatized child that you need me to beat up? No. Is there a vast oversupply of ice cream that you need me to eat before it melts? No. I never get to have any fun around here. Instead, Vinny wants our help with handling the rogue Mega Pokemon that are starting to appear around Lumio City. In all honesty though, these fights are all pretty straightforward. Partially because I've now done these battles an unhealthy number of times, but also because our team is really starting to come together. We have some solid type coverage, and Glaceon knowing Wish is definitely a big help in keeping our Pokemon healthy. So after Cynthia had tossed those 3 rogue Megas straight into the trash, we then returned to Hotel Z. Once we arrive though, we're interrupted by Zygarde, who just isn't taking the hint. Buddy, the ground dragon roll has already been filled. This thing with you and I just isn't going to work. Ultimately, Glaceon has to turn Zygarde into a 4-legged ice block for it to finally leave us alone. After that's dealt with, we head inside Hotel Z, and it's here that we receive the notification for our next opponent in the ZA Royale, Canary. Boasting powerful electric types, Canary is a very dangerous trainer, which is why I knew that it was time to go and find our next Pokemon. As in Wild Zone 8, we're eventually able to find ourselves Gible. As if it was destiny, despite this being a pretty hard Pokemon to catch, Cynthia was able to get it on the first try. And while this little shark jelly bean might not look like much of a menacing monster right now, at the current level cap, Gible can evolve immediately into Gabite. So while we still need some evolutions, Cynthia's team for Lumio City was really coming together. And you might be wondering, who is going to fill that final place on our roster? Well, no one. These are the only 5 Pokemon of Cynthia's in the entire game. All of the rest just straight up don't exist in Lumio City. Not even having a full team of Pokemon will make things incredibly difficult later on. For now though, with the help of Cynthia's new Gabite, our next promotion match is a very different story. My name's Canary, and I have 4 of the strongest electric types. My name's Cynthia. I have a walking shark who has an unshakable desire for human flesh. I want my mummy. I'm your new mummy now. The battle begins, and to make this an even 4-on-4, our Dynamo is left in its fish tank on the sidelines for now. Leading with Lucario gives us a really good matchup into Heliolisk, as a super effective Aura Sphere followed by a Bulldoze are all we need to take the early lead. Although Stunfisk does get the trade, but this is where Glaceon comes in clutch. The combination of our ice moves, along with Wish, allow Glaceon to lay down big damage while also staying alive. As such, not only does our Glaceon take down Stunfisk, it also dishes out big damage to Ampharos by the time our Evolution finally falls. After Roselia quickly cleans up Ampharos with Giga Drain, this leaves Canary with only her ace, the Mega Electro. This thing is insanely strong though. Roselia is only able to land one Magical Leaf before being completely wiped out by Crunch. So now the fight was down to a 1v1 with only our ace Gabite remaining. We both land our attacks at the exact same time, with both Pokemon left weak. However, as Canary uses Eerie Impulse, we dig underground. And once our super effective dig lands, this is enough to take down the Mega Electros. That was a lot closer than I expected, but we came out with the win on our very first attempt. And not only did we just earn our next promotion, but Cynthia also got to traumatize another child in the process. What a successful day this has been. Although that fight does make me worry for the rest of our challenge. We had a really good matchup there, and it was still incredibly close. So I started to wonder, what would happen in a fight where we didn't have a good matchup? And unfortunately, it wasn't going to take long for that to be answered. Because while the next few fights against Gwyn, as well as our rematch with Canary, are both relatively smooth, it's after these that we're faced by Ivor. Boasting 4 strong fighting types, Ivor's team is much more deadly for Cynthia than any of the fights we've had so far. None of our Pokemon have a good matchup here, and to make matters worse, 2 of them even have a fighting type weakness. As a result, I wasn't feeling too confident as we stepped forward to take on our toughest promotion match yet. But much to my surprise, this was even more abysmal than I expected. Despite Gabite now knowing Fire Fang, we can barely lay a scratch on Heracross, who quickly wipes out our lead with Pin Missile and Brick Break. I try sending in Lucario next, but it gets the exact same treatment, being decimated by a super effective Brick Break before Aerial Ace finishes the job. While our Glaceon is able to put up some resistance, by this point, we just don't have enough firepower left, as Medicham eventually takes out Glaceon before Ivor's Machamp absolutely buries our Roselia with a boosted Bulldoze. So, for the first time in a while, we had lost. But it wasn't just a loss, that was a brutal beatdown. Our team didn't even get close to winning that fight, and clearly, it was time to take action. Unfortunately, the level cap for Ivor is 47, and Gabite doesn't evolve until level 48, so we still won't be able to wield Cynthia's fully powered ace. Regardless, there are some other upgrades we can obtain. Starting with our little Dynamo, who, at the current level cap, is able to evolve into Electric. But wait, there's more. Because after buying a Thunderstone, it can then evolve again right away into Electros, a much stronger electric type who has now undoubtedly outgrown its tank. But our evolutions do not stop there, because while we can't buy a shiny stone, we can find one hidden in the scaffolding around the city. And with this, our Roselia is finally able to reach its full power, evolving into Roserade. While there's still one obvious glaring exception, now our team was looking a lot more like Cynthia's and a lot more formidable. So with my confidence now slightly restored, we once again return to Ivor with our upgraded team, looking for revenge and another rank up. But that's not what happened. Despite the improvements to our roster, I still went on to lose this fight 3 more times. I was definitely faring better than my first attempt, but even with some really good luck, I just wasn't able to overpower Ivor. Our team was being repeatedly slapped into the dirt as Cynthia was being embarrassed by this giant gym rat. And with our losses piling up, so too was my frustration. At this point, enough was enough. Clearly, I couldn't spare any expense here, so I once again returned to the drawing board to come up with a new plan. To help make our team as strong as possible, I went on a rampage, collecting nature mints as well as new TMs to give our team some extra ammunition. On top of that, after collecting a ton of mega shards from around the city, we're also able to buy the mega stones for Lucario, as well as our Electros. Now, with these much needed upgrades, I once again trekked back to Ivor, determined to crush these fighting types. The fight begins, and this time, our Gabite knows Aerial Ace, hitting Heracross for quad effective damage. This, combined with our Citrus Berry, allows Gabite to draw first blood with Bulldoze. Next in is Medicham, who I know is going to protect. So I take advantage of this by having Gabite use Dig, which can't be avoided. This gives us some chip damage before Gabite is absolutely crushed by an incoming Ice Punch. But fighting ice with ice, I send in Glaceon next. Despite our type weakness, Wish, combined with our powerful ice moves, allow Glaceon to quickly overpower Medicham without too much risk. Although, now Ivor was down to the business end of his team, and with Glaceon immediately falling against Machamp, the fight had quickly descended into a 2v2. However, our Roserade has an incredibly toxic moveset. With Leech Seed, Giga Drain, and Synthesis, Roserade has a lot of healing potential. This allows us to go toe-to-toe with Machamp, who just can't outpace our recovery, ultimately falling to Giga Drain. This leaves Ivor down to only his final Pokemon, who is also his most powerful, Mega Phalanx. Roserade's job here is just to land Toxic, which we are able to do before immediately falling to an Iron Head straight after. So, after trying to stall out the timer as long as possible for toxic damage to accrue, we send in Cynthia's newest Pokemon, Electros. And thanks to that toxic damage weakening Phalanx, after our Eel Mega Evolves, it only takes a single discharge for us to claim the kill, giving us some very satisfying revenge over Ivor. That fight was our most painful yet. But with Ivor now taught a very valuable lesson to not mess with Cynthia, we had finally earned our next promotion to rank D. With that hurdle now behind us, thanks to our updated level cap, we can finally obtain our last evolution, as at level 48, Gabite evolves into Garchomp, Cynthia's iconic ace, who has been a menace ever since it was introduced in Diamond and Pearl. Seriously, these two might have crushed more 10-year-olds than any other duo in Pokemon. With that evolution, there are no more of Cynthia's Pokemon left for us to obtain. This also means that our team is as strong as it can possibly get, which is a little worrying, since as this challenge goes on, our opponents will only continue to get larger teams of stronger Pokemon. However, thanks to this newfound power, Cynthia was about to begin her era of domination over Lumio City, because Garchomp was about to go on a complete tear. It's able to single-handedly deal with most of Philippe's steel types when we go to meet up with the Rust Syndicate. And after buying Garchomp's Mega Stone from the Stone Emporium, this ends up being a big help in clearing through the next round of Rogue Megas. Seriously, Garchomp just completely speedran the Mega Ampharos fight, helping us to clear through another round of Rogues. So, our team was completely on a roll, and Cynthia was showing no signs of slowing down. Because after wiping out an entire clan of ghost types with one single attack, eventually we're able to take on Corbeau for our next promotion match. And while he is usually a very menacing trainer, this fight is completely free for Cynthia. Our steel type Lucario is immune to poison, which allows it to take care of Arbok. And thankfully, the nightmarish Gyarados is handled with ease thanks to us having Electros. From there, the rest of our team gradually works its way through the rest of Corbeau's team, giving us a pretty comfortable win on the first attempt, as well as a promotion to rank C. And this level of dominance was not going to end soon, as our next few fights would all follow a similar script. It's over for you, Cynthia. With these purple walls now up, you can't escape. That's cute, LeBon, but I'm not trapped in here with you, you're trapped in here with me. And LeBon was not going to be the only victim of Cynthia's rampage, as next up is our rank up match against Jacinth. And while her fairy types are very scary for Garchomp, they're not scary at all for Lucario. In reality, this was our most dominant fight of the entire game so far. After Mega Evolving Lucario, it turns into a beast. It only takes a quick Bullet Punch and Metal Claw to make light work of the lead Carbink. After that, Bulldoze and Extreme Speed rip through Mawile before Gardevoir is instantly crushed by our Steel combo. After the incoming Aurorus suffers the exact same fate, this leaves Jacinth with only her Mega Clefable. But even this flying pink puffball isn't enough to stop Lucario. Our Metal Claw and Bullet Punch bring it to the brink of death before one final Extreme Speed is all we need to claim the final kill. With that, Lucario had just soloed a 1v5. With Jacinth being thoroughly embarrassed in her own rigged tournament, Cynthia had now reached rank B. So those last few fights since we got Garchomp had all been very dominant for the Sinnoh champion. Our reign of terror had been out of control, as Cynthia was stomping the trainers of Lumio City. However, all good things must come to an end. And while we are close to the end of this game, with some seriously tough trainers coming up, our biggest challenge so far comes from a trainer you probably wouldn't expect: Grizel. Looking at Cynthia's squad, we have a pretty glaring weakness to fire, with 3 of our Pokemon being either highly flammable or highly meltable. But before we get to dealing with her, this next section of the game has us try to uncover the identity of Garchomp, our final opponent in the ZA Royale. This involves some conversations with Emma and Mabel, as well as a battle against Emma's full team. Although, if there are any Emma fans in the chat, look away now, because your girl was absolutely trashed on here. Garchomp decided to go full demon mode here and literally soloed through Emma's entire roster for another brutal beatdown. Regardless, after learning what we can from Emma and Mabel, this leads us to a cafe near the base of Prism Tower. Hey, can I get one ice cream? Ew, we don't serve that trash here. This is a healthy, organic cafe. You just made a powerful enemy, young man. Turns out, this barista is actually Garchomp, our next opponent in the ZA Royale. Although, after that disrespect we were just shown, Cynthia had to retaliate by going after not just Garchomp, but his girlfriend too. Although, as we already know, Grizel's team is a really tough matchup for us. Boasting 3 fire types and just some all-round strong Pokemon, this was looking like our toughest matchup in a while. Since we can't change our team members, all I can really do here is update our movesets and hope for the best, as Cynthia then stepped forward to take on the fire-type monster, Grizel. I lead with Garchomp, who is, by far, our strongest option against Grizel's Talonflame, as, after tanking a quick attack, a quad-effective Stone Edge instantly buries the bird, giving us an early lead. Grizel then sends in her Metagross, making this a battle between the Gen 3 and Gen 4 Pseudos. While this looks like a good matchup for us on paper, as Dig does big damage to Metagross, we then get hit by Ice Punch, crippling our Garchomp. And while Bulldoze does get Metagross low, Garchomp is ultimately finished off by Psycho Cut. With the fight now at a 4v4, and us having lost our best Pokemon, this looks pretty dicey. However, this is where Cynthia's Electros goes big, because Discharge can quickly finish off the weakened Metagross. And while the incoming ground-type Camerupt is very dangerous, our Eel also knows Liquidation, which is the perfect counter, drowning the Camel in a single shot. Now we had pulled ahead, but our Eel wasn't done yet, because after Mega Evolving, a Discharge can fry the incoming Aerodactyl out of the sky in an instant. As a result, now the fight had gone from a 4v4 down to a 4v1. And while Mega Pyroar does put up some resistance, wiping out our Mega Eel, from here, Lucario is able to finish the fight with one last Aura Sphere, giving us the final KO that we need. So, despite a pretty poor matchup, Cynthia had still come out with the win, continuing to demonstrate the monstrous power of the Sinnoh champ. After that, we have to spend some time down in Lysander's basement, looking for more children for Cynthia to traumatize. But after eventually resurfacing, we're finally clear to take on our next promotion match against Garchomp. This guy's team is insane. Not only are we outnumbered in a 5v6, but Grisham's team features some of the strongest Pokemon in the game, including a pseudo-dragon of his own, as well as a Mega Charizard, which is incredibly deadly with its Fire Dragon typing. Despite how dominant we had been in our last few promotion fights, this is one that really makes me worry. If only I had Cynthia's Togekiss with me, this battle could be a lot less scary. But since we have no other choice, I had to try and come up with some sort of plan to overcome this disadvantage. So after rearranging my movesets, we began our final promotion match against the ice cream hater Grisham. Against his Pangoro, my plan here is to lead with Roserade, because after using Toxic to bait out the Protect, we can then hit Pangoro with a quad-effective Dazzling Gleam that rocks the panda straight into its grave. Grisham then follows up with Malamar. As he uses Hypnosis to make Roserade drowsy, we can fire back with a Pin Missile for big damage before also landing a Giga Drain and Dazzling Gleam to wipe out the oversized squid. While our Roserade can't hang on much longer, quickly falling against Pyroar, our flower just went huge, turning this from a 5v6 into a 4v4. Thankfully, our momentum continues to roll as a liquidation from Electros is enough to finish off Pyroar. On top of that, our Eel is also able to dish out big damage to the very dangerous Tyranitar before falling. Regardless, Lucario is quickly able to finish off Tyranitar with Aura Sphere before our Glaceon can quickly freeze Salamence with Ice Beam, taking down the dragon in just one shot. So all of a sudden, now Grisham was left with only his ace, Mega Charizard X. The Fire Dragon obviously makes light work of our Glaceon, and with Lucario at low health, this means that the fight is basically all down to our ace, Garchomp. Immediately, we Mega Evolve our Garchomp. The two Mega Dragons then go toe-to-toe, and Garchomp wins! A super effective Dragon Rush cleans up the kill, giving us a massive win over Grisham. With that, not only had we made Grisham submit to the might of Cynthia, but now Cynthia had also been promoted to her rightful place in Rank A. Now Grisham, be a good boy and get me one ice cream, please. Yes, ma'am. Right away. That's a good boy. Having now attained the highest rank and dominated Lumio City, Cynthia was ready to return to Sinnoh when disaster strikes. Prism Tower starts to act out, and obviously, Cynthia is the most qualified to handle this situation, especially since the deadbeat Kalos champion is nowhere to be found, even during times of crisis. Although, for some reason, Urbane decides that this is the best time to take a shot at the Queen. He wants to fight Cynthia to determine who truly is the strongest Mega Evolution user. So, despite this apparent crisis taking place, we have to take part in one more final showdown against our rival. But if you thought that Cynthia wasn't going to traumatize yet another child, you were wrong. Compared to Cynthia, Urbane is a third-rate trainer with a fourth-rate team. His diverse type coverage gives our team plenty of openings, as Cynthia's Pokemon just put on a clinic, wiping through the majority of his team very quickly. In the end, just like in our fight against Grisham, Mega Garchomp was left staring down another rival dragon. But with a super effective Dragon Claw, Cynthia's Garchomp reigns supreme, dominating Feraligatr and tossing the last of Urbane's team into the trash. With that, Cynthia had left yet another child with crippling trauma. This leaves only one final task: saving the city. Our final boss fight is against the rampaging Prism Tower, which has now gone rogue. However, just like our fights against the trainers of Lumio City, Cynthia is more than equipped to handle this. By relying on Garchomp's Sand Tomb, we can stay at a safe distance, while also gradually chipping away at the rogue tower over time. This method works perfectly, as before long, all three phases of the flowers had been taken down, and with one final assist from Mega Zygarde, also known as Temu Garchomp, the tower was finally taken care of. With that, now Cynthia had saved Lumio City and had truly beaten all of Pokémon Legends ZA in dominant fashion. jump into this video next for more Pokemon content. As always, a big thank you to all of our channel members for continuing to support the channel. It really means a lot. Also, let me know in the comments which Pokemon of Cynthia's is your favorite. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.